Airbnb rental arbitrage is a practice of renting out a property or multiple properties and then subletting them on Airbnb to guests. Now, most of you watching this video likely do not own any property that you can rent out to even start a rental arbitrage business. Lucky for you, there is a trick to get around this issue, and that's simply convincing a landlord to rent their property to you instead. Of course, it sounds nice, but the process is not that easy. I mean, after all, the final decision lies with the landlord, right? Well, I got good news, because if you stay until the end of this video, you'll learn how to convince a landlord to allow Airbnb so you can run your own Airbnb business without using other people's property. Not only that, but I'll give you a list of questions you'll need along with a checklist that will guarantee you get better results. This is by far one of the most difficult hurdles to overcome when starting an Airbnb rental arbitrage, so follow these 6 tips to get started. Number 1. Conversation is key. A constructive and heartfelt conversation is crucial if you want to convince the landlord to allow Airbnb. The fact is that what you are about to discuss with your landlord is only not a first impression, but also a form of negotiation. Consider your stance as a tenant before you start the discussion and ask yourself questions like, how is your relationship with your landlord? How long have you been a tenant of this landlord? Does the landlord know about Airbnb rental arbitrage and how it works? Does the landlord own many other properties? Is the landlord a broad-minded person open to new ideas? How fast can you be replaced with a new tenant? Weighing out the pros and cons of the probable answers you will get from these questions will ultimately help be ready to have that conversation with a landlord. Number 2. Understand the landlord perspective. First of all, in order to get the landlord's point of view, you must understand his or her perspective. Obviously, it is true that renting homes via Airbnb to make money is not unusual, but in this situation, you are likely a complete stranger who doesn't own a property. I mean, come on, why on earth would someone hand over the keys that easily? You need to first understand how the average landlord views his investment property, and also consider all the reasons why your landlord decided to rent short-term, as investing in long-term rental properties has low risks and is a good source of income over time. You need to understand that the majority of landlords see these properties as a fixed, long-term income stream, so there is no reason to invest more energy and time in them. It can also be considered a waste of time for them to spend more time on the rental. Worst case scenario for the landlord would probably be property damage or the eviction of a tenant. But then tenants can be replaced and property damage can easily be covered by insurance. Just imagine putting yourself in the landlord's shoes. You put in a lot of effort into getting that property ready to lease, and now you finally found an interesting tenant. But the tenant is requesting to sublet the property and allow strangers in and out of their space for their own profit. It just went from a safe and low-risk property to a very high-risk property. The conversation can easily be turned into a positive one if you approach the landlord with a solid business-minded and proper game plan. You can sell your ideas much more positively, with solid reasons to list your spare space as an Airbnb. Number 3. Understand your lease contract. Before you even meet or talk to the landlord, you better have read all the rules and regulations that apply to you. You have to understand how the lease contracts and rules apply to you before you start hosting. Make sure to read any rules about subletting and ask your landlord if you have any questions. It is actually your responsibility to understand and abide by these rules before deciding to list your space. Make sure you do not do something that gives the landlord valid reasons to evict you, even before you are able to pitch your Airbnb rental arbitrage business idea to him or her. Even if everything goes well with the landlord and you are to go ahead, review these rules and other laws in your city or state to make sure you are in complete compliance. Number 4. Prepare for the meeting. First impressions are everything, so make sure you come with enough information and be as transparent as possible. Make sure to describe your plans honestly and upfront. Assume that there are risks and that you are willing to cooperate. So this is a win-win situation for both of you. Explain how you will mitigate potential risks that may arise and the reassurances you can provide in order to ensure the safety of the property. Present your proposal with as much transparency as possible while explaining the Airbnb business model and how you plan to conduct the business. Do not forget to ask about their opinions on Airbnb rental arbitrage. Think about it. After all, this is their property, not yours. Listen and be open to suggestions from the landlord. Using this method, you can find out the misconceptions they need to dispel or the remedies you can apply to any problems they anticipate. And although it may not be always possible, try as much as possible to have this conversation in person. Remember that phone calls and emails do not often convey nonverbal signals. Number 5. Provide reassurance for the landlord. When you finally have the conversation with your landlord, hopefully you get to learn the reasons why the landlord isn't comfortable letting you sublet the property. If reasons are objections such as the risk being too high because the present insurance policy doesn't cover any damages, let the landlord know about Airbnb trust and safety resources like the $1 million host guarantee and the $1 million host protection policy. You can also take your additional rental insurance and include the clause in the contract, basically stating that you are responsible for any damages. Different insurance offers are available depending on the market, and a larger security deposit can be negotiated as well. You can also assure your landlord that 99% of the guests are reasonable and trustworthy if the objection about allowing bad guests into the premises comes up. The possible solution to give would be the implementing of guest screening and only accepting guests with a profile that fits your standards. Guests will also have to accept your strict house rules before they book your place. Share those rules with the landlord to be as transparent as possible and remove their fears about bad guests or thieves coming in as guests. Number 6. What's in it for the landlord? Sorry to tell you, but Airbnb arbitrage is not all about you. It's providing value to a landlord that results in a win-win situation for both of you. You can offer to share the profits and give them a percentage of each booking, which would in turn yield them a higher rent. You can also offer to either pay a few months' rent upfront, purchase your own vacation rental insurance, increase the size of your security deposit, extend your lease, or create solid rules that work for all parties, making it a win-win situation. What is the last resort? I've got another approach you can try if the landlord is not yet convinced, and that would be legal counsel. Speak to the landlord's legal counsel, as contracts, tenants' rights, and insurance are typically handled by them. Make sure the legal counsel understands the benefits of your proposal, especially to their client. Lawyers are legally obligated to represent their client's interests, and if you are able to get a landlord's legal counsel to support your idea, it will be much more difficult for a landlord to turn you down. One thing that's always a top priority when it comes to renting an Airbnb property, especially subletting like you do with rental arbitrage, and that's the cleaning and maintenance after each guest. Note that the property has to be cleaned constantly before and after each stay. Taking care of the property is quite extensive and very important, since if not, you risk getting bad reviews. All minor damages have to be fixed immediately to avoid negatively impacting the business. Ever since Airbnb was founded in the year 2008, it has gained a lot of popularity as a rental option for short-term rentals, and has indeed grown into an empire on a global scale, with at least 150 million Airbnb guests and users in almost 8 million properties listed on Airbnb that are run by about 5 million hosts. With numbers like that, it has become a part of real estate that serious property investors and property managers, as well as hosts who are looking at earning passively, dabble into Airbnb rental arbitrage. And if you follow the steps in this video, you can be one of those as well. Now, obviously, I know that having a script and asking all the right questions to get a landlord to say yes is something that will go a long way in convincing a landlord. That's why we've created the perfect video for you here next that explains how. If you found any of this helpful, hit the thumbs up button for the YouTube algorithm so it can be spread to more people. So click the video on the screen now, and I'll see you in the next one.